Hello, I'm Brenda and I work in the Young Adult Department here at the ENIAC District Library. Today we will be making some sock gnomes. So these cute guys. I know that there were a lot of people who were super disappointed that they were unable to make these when we did these with the young adults. But this year we brought them back and adults can make them too. These sock gnomes are super easy to make because you don't need to know how to sew in order to make them. So why don't we get started and go over the supplies. With these projects, we usually have kits for you. You should have picked those up by now. If you're doing this at home, I will talk about the supplies that you need in order to do the sock gnome. You do need a sock, one singular sock. You don't need two unless you want to make two gnomes. Your next item is the poly beads. It's a half cup of poly beads that you need in a plastic bag. You do also need 4 rubber bands. You need a bell or a pom-pom, but we're using bells. And then you also need a fake beard type thing. We cut ours out of faux fur. The ones in the kit should be pre-cut for you. You will also be provided with a square of nylon. In this video, I hadn't quite cut out my little square yet, so I had a whole nylon. You don't need a whole nylon, you just need a little square of it because it's just for the nose. There are also some supplies that you will need to provide for yourself. You do need your own hot glue gun as well as scissors because you will also need to cut certain things. And also, before I forget, you also need stuffing, probably the most important item that you need for the sock gnome. The first thing that we need to do is to cut the sock in half right at the heel. All right, so the sock has been cut. So the next thing to do is to make ready the poly beads. Your poly beads in your kit are already in a bag. If you don't have a kit, then you will have to put your poly beads in a bag. Once they're in the bag, you kind of want to lead all of the poly beads into one corner and then make sure that the poly beads are all together, but don't make them so tightly packed that it isn't moldable. The poly beads are there to make a flat, heavy bottom so that your gnome will be able to sit straight up and won't fall over. If you have it very densely packed in that corner, then your gnome is going to have a hard time standing straight up. Once you have that, you want to tie the very top of your baggie of poly beads with a rubber band. When I was doing this, I sort of forgot about not having the poly beads be very densely packed. So I had already put on the rubber band before I remembered that that was a thing that I had to remember to do, was not to have it densely packed. And so afterwards, after I put on the rubber band, I smushed it around a little bit to make sure that it had a flat bottom. Once you have that rubber band tightly onto the bag, then you want to trim off the excess plastic bag. So now we have to put the baggie inside of the sock. So it is the foot portion of the sock that you want to use. And you just put the sock in like that. Okay, so now we have to fill the sock with polyfill. So in order to achieve a not lumpy sock gnome, what I did was to put some of the stuffing in between the baggie of poly beads and the sock. If you just put the stuffing just right on top of the baggie of poly beads, then in your sock gnome, you're able to see where the baggie ends and where the stuffing begins. So in order to not have that, you just kind of have to stick some of the stuffing in between the sock and the poly beads. So once you kind of stick that out and smush it around, usually then you don't see that line or that divot. between the poly bead and the stuffing. And also you then achieve a very smooth, non-lumpy sock gnome. Once you have achieved non-lumpiness, then you can keep on stuffing your sock on top of the beads, just smoothing it out like always. You do need to tie the sock at the top, so just make sure that you leave enough sock for you to be able to do that. Okay, now we take another rubber band, and then we are rubber banding the top, because these are, after all, no-sew sock gnomes. Okay, just rubber band them tightly. There you go. The next thing that we are going to do is to take the other part of the sock that we cut off, turn it inside out, and then take a rubber band and rubber band the top portion of the sock. Once I put the rubber band onto the inside portion of the hat, what I did was I trimmed off a little bit of the excess that was on the hat. After that, I turned the hat inside out. Now that the hat and the body are done, I put the hat to the side and I took the body of the gnome out. I realized that when I was trying to put on the hat, that some of the extra fabric on the body was making the hat stick straight up, and I didn't like that, so I cut off some of the excess fabric off of the body of the gnome. After that, I tested out the hat by just sliding it onto the body, hiding the rubber band and the little tuft of fabric coming out from it. And I kind of just moved the hat around until I got it to a place where I liked it. Now it's time for the beard. The beard is already pre-cut for you, so you don't really have to cut it or anything for the most part. It is a little bit scraggly looking, but if you don't like the scraggly look, you can brush it out and it becomes smoother and nicer looking. If you want a smooth beard, then I would suggest brushing it out. I had a round brush with me, so I used that on the beard, and that turned out real nice. But I also know that Carol, she had one of those pet brushes, and she brushed out the beard with that, and that also turned out really good. The next thing to do is to glue the beard onto the body of your sock gnome. I did make a small mistake here. The beard is a little bit longer than what I particularly wanted, but I didn't really notice that until after I glued it on. So I would suggest that what you do is take off the hat off of your sock gnome and then figure out where exactly it is that you want your beard, and then glue the beard on there. What you can do if you feel as if your beard is too long is that you can cut a bit of the top off, and if you do that, it'll make it so that your beard isn't dragging. So in order to glue on the beard, what I did was to put a line of hot glue onto the body of the gnome where I wanted the beard, and then I just stuck the beard on there. If you feel as if the beard is a little too floppy like that, what you can do is that towards like the foot or the bottom of your gnome, you can put some hot glue there and then stick the bottom of the beard there. That way it's not just loosely on there. Now that you have glued the beard onto the body, you have to put the hat back onto the gnome. I also hot glue the hat onto the gnome by lifting the hat and then sticking some hot glue gun all around the perimeter of the hat. I also make sure that the edge of the beard is covered That way you don't see any ragged edges or anything. Now we have to make our little nose. In order to do that, you take your little square of nylon and you stuff a little bit of some leftover polyfill inside of the nylon. You do that by putting your polyfill in the middle of the nylon and then pinching together the ends of the nylon so that the polyfill is contained by the nylon. So you will, in your hand, you will have a little bunch of nylon that you will have to then tie off. You can try and tie it off with a rubber band if you want to, but what worked best with us is just having a bit of thread and then just tying it off with that little piece of thread. Or if you have one of those little tiny itty bitty hair rubber bands, that would probably work as well. Those red rubber bands are a little bit big and kind of thick, and they really do show up in the gnome. Once you have your nose tied off, you can then trim the ends. Now that the nose is done, you can then glue it onto your sock gnome. You do this by tucking in the ends of the nose into the hat, right by where the beard is. Once you figure out where you want your nose, you flip the hat up a little bit, you take a little bit of hot glue, and you put some hot glue there. You stick the ends of the nose onto that hot glue and then fold the hat back downwards so that the ends of the nose are covered. If you notice, your nose is pointing downwards. If you don't quite like it like that, what you can do is then put a little bit of hot glue onto the top of the hat right behind where the nose is, and then just press the nose right onto that hot glue. Last but not least, what we have to do is now glue the little bell on top of the hat of the gnome. You do that very simply. You just put a little bit of glue right in the center of the top of the hat, and then you stick the little bell right there, and then you're done. These guys really did turn out really cute. 2 of these I made last year, and this third one is a welcome addition. I think maybe I should start a village or something. Let us know how your gnomes turned out. We really would like to see them. I hope you guys had as much fun making this project as I did. Until next time, bye.